The Owl House continued the trend of main characters in cartoons getting their own shonen anime transformation, with its series finale Watching and Dreaming introducing Titan Luz, or as the crew behind the scenes call her, Luzan. And don't get it twisted, I love the abundance of transformations we've been getting in cartoons since the 2010s, simply because I think they look cool. And they pretty much always are transformations that incorporate various aspects of the series and its characters, which makes it rewarding to see as a viewer. The only problem I have with them is that we usually don't get enough of them. And obviously the Owl House is no exception since we only got Luzan in the last episode. Which isn't a complaint, it's actually something I prefer for the narrative, but at the same time, Luzan is such a cool transformation that has a ton of potential. Like, this is Luz who has full control over all of glyph magic. Which not only means she has control over every glyph combination, but in theory, she can create new glyph combinations. Which may just sound like wild magic, but considering this power-up comes right from the source of magic, she could create types of magic never before seen on the Boiling Isles. At least, not by witches. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. Now, I've said this before, but I doubt Watching and Dreaming is the last we're going to get at the Owl House, and I wouldn't be surprised if we get at least a graphic novel down the road. With how many views Season 3 has on YouTube, and how hard Disney has been milking the finale, they're gonna want to capitalize on this success some more. And make no mistake, this past year has really shown executives how popular the show really is. Between the insane turnout at Comic-Con, the YouTube views, and its performance over on Disney+. So when we inevitably get more of the Owl House, assuming we keep moving forward in the timeline and get a glimpse at Luz's college adventures, is it possible that Luzan could also make a comeback? Let's talk about it. So of course, Luz was only able to get her temporary Titan power from the big guy himself at the cost of his own life. A comment on my breakdown for Watching and Dreaming referred to this exchange and the glyph patterns on the Titan's arm as the Titan's Blessing, and that's the only thing I want to call it now because it sounds pretty cool. Considering Luz received this blessing during less than ideal circumstances, the rules are rather vague. All we know is that she'd only have this power for a short amount of time. It leaves me wondering what would happen if she tried receiving this blessing from a different Titan. Would that Titan only be able to lend her power to Luz if it means surrendering their own life? Or did the Titan only pass because he was 95% dead already, was getting eaten alive by Belos, and had to bring Luz back to life on top of lending her magic? Maybe a Titan's blessing wouldn't normally lead to them kicking the bucket, at least not immediately, but it would require a little bit of their life force, taking a few years off of their life in the process. Which may not ultimately make much of a difference, given that Titans evidently live for a very, very long time. Maybe letting their power while in good health just leaves them a little drained and they need time to recover. One thing about the Owl House is that they try to ensure genuine consequences. When Ida lost her magic, there was no going back. She had to adapt without it, just like she had to adapt to her curse. When Belos got flattened by the Collector in his monster form, there was no going back. He never really recovered from that. He was basically stuck as a monster who couldn't keep himself together. So for Luz to return to this form again, I think something would have to be at stake. Something that goes beyond a time limit. And keeping in mind that this is a Disney property, and thus any future content will still have some restrictions on how far they can push the envelope, I do think the most likely scenario is that Luz receiving another Titan's power means that the Titan in question would be sacrificing a chunk of their own life in order to transfer this power. It's kind of like Lekmet from Star vs. the Forces of Evil, the only member on the High Commission who wasn't totally corrupt. He had the ability to heal other people at the expense of his own life force, which accumulated in the first major death of the series. Yeah, I don't care if the ending was trash. It was the Disney TVA series that built upon the kind of serialized format that Gravity Falls reintroduced to the studio, and that fact can't be erased. So with all of that said, let's talk about King. Obviously, King is the last remaining Titan, until he himself eventually lays an egg or two in the far future. So the return of Titan Luz really hinges on him. But when would King even need to give Luz such a boost in power? Well, there's actually a Mooring Mark comic that explores the perfect scenario for such an occasion. If you're not following Mooring Mark's comics, you're honestly making a huge mistake because he's been around since the Gravity Falls days and has made a ton of great comics for pretty much all of the big story-driven Disney TVA series over the years. Seriously, check him out and give him a follow on Twitter and Instagram.
And follow me too, thanks.
In this comic, the Collector informs Luz and her friends that his siblings, the Archivists, have returned to the Boiling Isles and are here to finish what they started all those years ago. So Luz pulls out her trump card, revealing that her and King have been practicing the Titan's blessing. King taps into his awakened state as his own glyph pattern appears on his arm, lending his magic to Luz as she's once again transformed into Luzan, with an updated appearance to complement her timeskip look. And Gus has to pick Amity's jaw off of the floor. Now, I love this premise, and I think if we got more of the Owl House that explores this new era on the Boiling Isles, I could see a scene going down like this 100%, especially with Titan magic canceling out the magic of the Archivists. You're gonna need more than one person on your side that has that power. But I do believe there would be some factors at play that would separate this rendition of Luzan from what we saw in Watching and Dreaming. Mainly that Papa Titan died as an elder, so the magic he gave Luz was fully developed and very potent, which directly translated into Luz being this untouchable and unstoppable force of nature. But with King, his powers are still developing and thus are still getting stronger. So I think there's a possibility that Luz's Titan form wouldn't be nearly as strong as it was before if it came from a teenage King. Or at the very least, she may not be able to maintain the form as long as she did before. I think the form would only be able to get stronger if King got stronger, which I think would actually be a smart move narratively, because it means defeating the Archivists would require more than raw strength. However, even if this form would be weaker than the one bestowed by Papa Titan, it could still provide its own advantages, as we learn in the epilogue that King's glyphs are different from his father's. Although he produced his own light glyph and is probably capable of replicating the other elements, a part of me thinks it's also possible for King to create entirely new glyphs that do entirely new things. Like, imagine there was a black hole glyph, and a King-powered Luzan could conjure up little black holes. The sky's the limit here, people! This form of Luzan would have their very own moveset that they didn't have before. And even if this form isn't as powerful as the one before, it would be just as unique. One thing that would be cool to see is Luz's Titan form evolving into different stages as King's own powers evolve. You know, like how there's a bajillion forms of Super Saiyan, or Naruto's 9-tailed chakra. I'd love it if Luz's transformations got to the point where her head grows a full-on Titan skull. Honestly, the Owl House has such great potential for different kinds of transformations with all of its main cast, and writing this video has given me inspiration to not only break down the transformations we've gotten in the series, but shed light on transformations that would be killer to see in future installments. But for now, let me know what you guys think about the Return of Titan Luz, and how they can mix things up for her in the future. Let's get a conversation going in the comments down below, and keep that conversation rolling over on Twitter and Instagram at Roundtable Vids and at AwestruckVox. Check out ToonDrip for some dope Owl House inspired merch. Special thanks to Janky Bones for creating a phenomenal thumbnail. For more of their amazing art, you can find them on Twitter and Instagram at BoneJanky, and subscribe to their YouTube channel. Links down below in the description. And if you enjoyed this video, throw it a like, and subscribe to the Roundtable with notifications on for more great cartoon content. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have an awesome day. See ya!